super excited to have you all join me for the final webinar in our Spring 2022 webinar series. We do these actually 3 times a quarter, once a month throughout the year on topics that are either hot at the time, interesting topics, topics that are requested, or the most popular. Sometimes it's topics that our faculty have a real passion to share with you. So we do these throughout the year, like I said, and we're really glad you joined us. A quick little shameless plug for Rasmussen University. Of course, I have to do that as that is our host tonight is Rasmussen University. We do have fully online early childhood education programs from a certificate all the way up to a bachelor completer degree, an associate degree. We even have a CDA prep training class series. For more information, you can absolutely visit our website where you're going to get a comprehensive reference point to start with, and as well as you can inquire right there online with our admissions advisors to get more information about how you can make a degree your educational journey. We do have some pretty cool news that just started in April, so I still want to share it because it's important. Rasmussen really wanted to recognize the fact that early childhood education has really taken a hit during the COVID pandemic. And it's been real tough out there for some folks whose programs closed completely or were laid off, or those that are coming back but maybe not at full time, but regardless are coming back to qualifications that they need to meet in order to be in a room with children or to be that lead teacher they've always wanted to be. And so we really wanted to make sure that the cost for a degree was affordable. And so we reduced our tuition. I don't even have the percentage of what it got down to, but it's pretty low compared to what we were at. We were at, I think it was $269 a credit for full-time students prior to April. Now it's $161 per credit for an associate degree. And this is it, people. This is the fee. So we try to keep things really simple for you. The benefit of it is that that's before any transfer credits come through, before a CDA credential waiver, if you have a current CDA credential, comes through, before you take what we call self-directed assessments, which are kind of like a fancy test out for courses that you are taking towards your degree. And so it's really a great opportunity to get your foot in, to get that associate's degree at a really low cost and get that going for you. We know that eventually these are going to be the routine. These are going to be the degrees that are going to be requested for educators in early childhood education programs across the country. So now's the time to get started. You can also jump in with even less with a certificate and a diploma. So if you're not really ready to bite off that associate degree, you can certainly come in and start with a certificate and then work your way up to an associate's degree with a diploma. So if you have any of those questions, you'll want to contact an admissions advisor with Rasmussen University at our website, and they can get you all the information. They can help you talk through all the costs and help you get started as soon as you are able. Our next start date is actually right after the 4th of July, July 5th. And we do go year round, so you know you can get done much quicker when you don't take a whole summer break. So hopefully you'll pass the word. If you are already fully degreed and don't need it, you'll pass the word to those that do, please. That would be great. We do have an information session as well that will help answer those questions that someone might have. They can register for the information session on June 21st. Otherwise, they are offered every single month. So if now's not the right time, there'll be another one in July and another one in August and so on and so on. So hopefully if you have those in your life who are interested in a degree in early childhood education, they should get all the information they can on all the different programs that they might be interested in, because you want to find the one that's going to fit you best. So you are in a WebEx virtual learning space, virtual classroom, however you like to refer to it. This is how what we've used all year, and this will be the last year we use WebEx, so we'll have to get used to a whole new system, yay, for 2023, but we've got time for that now. You are here in our WebEx space, and you have been muted to avoid any of that background noise. We hope you're at home in some comfortable clothing with a snack in front of you perhaps, hopefully a pen and paper to take some notes. But we do recommend you using your computer speakers and microphone to avoid any phone charges. But if you do have issues with sound, and it does happen, Technology is not a perfect beast. You'll want to make sure to switch. So you can switch to a computer, you can switch back to your phone, and you should be able to do that pretty simply by going to the quick start icon or tab at the top left of your screen, which will get you to the system to be able to go to the other one. If for some reason there's just glitches, you are welcome to leave and restart. Come back in. You're not left out of the classroom once you leave. You can come back in, and sometimes your system just needs that reboot to get back into the classroom clearly, and you will be able to join us again from where you left off. And then if there's any comments or questions, we are muted just because of that background noise. So please put your questions, your comments, your thoughts in the chat box, and I will be glad to answer them either during the session or following the session, depending on how things go. We do already have a question here from Helen. Will they offer a master's in early childhood? Oh, not anytime soon, Helen, not anytime soon, but I encourage you, if you are interested in that being something in the future, to always, inquire with Rasmussen formally. We take those inquiries to heart. And if you're already have that bachelor's degree and you're looking for that master's degree, it might be worth just asking, because sometimes, when you ask enough, sometimes that squeaky wheel gets the grease. But I don't have anything in the near future at all at this point. We're just trying to get all of the early childhood educators qualified out there first, and then who knows what the future brings. You do have one in-service hour awarded for attending tonight's session. You will receive a certificate by email within 48 business hours of this session, barring any weird glitches like we had a couple months ago. You do need to participate for the session, and so the system here does track that, so I know if you leave and then don't come back or what have you. We do send them to the email that you use to register. So you'll want to check the spam and junk folders of that email if you do not receive the certificate by Monday night at the end of the day. If you do still not have it for some reason, please email me, and I'd be glad to look into that for you and figure out why, and or send you your certificate separately. So just let me know, and we'll figure it out from there. But like I said, double check that spam and junk folder. Some emails change too, so you may have been getting it all this time, and then suddenly your email changes its parameters, and suddenly you're not getting it. So you'll want to double check there just to be on the safe side. All right, so welcome to our facilitator. That would be me tonight. So I am your presenter. Again, my name is Mary Muhs, and I am the department chair here at Rasmussen University for Early Childhood Education and Human Services. And I've been with Rasmussen almost 12 years, 12 years on July 5th. And I really loved my role at Rasmussen. I do miss being in a little child's presence every single day. You are all, those of you that are in the front lines are just blessed to be able to do it, no matter how hard it is. To make that immediate difference in the life of a child is a gift. So thank you for giving of yourself every single day. So let's get started with our session officially content-wise. Outdoor play is so much more than climbers. That's what you're here tonight, because now's the time, right? Some of you have already been outside on your playground for a couple months, depending on where you live. Others have just been getting out there on a regular basis due to the weather. And of course, that comes and goes throughout the year for us. But I thought it was really important for us to take this time after we've spent the spring quarter talking about play, ever since Week of the Young Child, where play has been the common conversation for these webinars, and really just kind of a conversation that I've seen out in the world of early childhood recently, that call back to what play is and how important play is in the life and development of children. I thought it was important for us to do some examinations of our playgrounds and our outdoor play spaces for children. And so that's what we're here to do today. So our objectives today will be to describe the developmental benefits of outdoor play. This should be pretty easy for all of you, I would hope. But sometimes we need reminders, and sometimes we need the words to be able to share it with others. Create outdoor play spaces to meet developmental needs and goals, and adapt outdoor play spaces to inspire and actively engage all of our children. Doesn't this photo kind of give you vertigo? Yeah, it does, and kind of makes you a little nervous, right? I have no idea how high up she is, but she certainly is smiling, and it looks like she feels quite accomplished. So I want to ask you a question first, and I want you to put your thoughts in the chat. What do you remember most about your childhood playgrounds? What do you remember most about your childhood playgrounds? A big climbing structure. It was scary, but it was fun. No walls, a jungle gym. Lots of sand. I bet your mother and father loved that. Metal bars and sand on the playground. I remember metal bars too. Asphalt. Oh yes, pea gravel was. I remember the pea gravel underneath the eagle's nest, if I remember right. That was what that was called. So much swings and hiding under the platforms in our fortress. Yes, high slides and dirt. Metal swing sets. Oh yes, swing sets. Lots of trees to climb. Good for you, Rhonda. Trees and hills. Love to hear that. Hot metal equipment. Yep. You burned your little hands or your little thighs when you had shorts on. Slides that burnt your bottom. There you go. Swings in a slide. Just looked like a park. Yeah. Climbing the trees. I'm so happy to hear that from several of you. Tons of space, wooden structures. Never wanting to come back inside. Yeah. Merry-go-rounds. Yes. Those would make me throw up. Make forts out of wood branches, lots of outside time, riding my bicycle, fun times. Yes. So all of this are things that come to life. And it really, you know, I don't know who you all are. I know some of you personally, but I don't know who you all are. But it might also vary based upon our generation. Where, you know, you talk about the metal climbing structures and then someone else talked about a wooden climbing structure. It's a little bit of difference as time has passed on how we found what is maybe the safest or what is the most economical or perhaps what is the most easy to maintain or the most ecologically friendly, perhaps. Yeah, metal slides and monkey bars, absolutely. That's what you remember about your early childhood playgrounds. I did notice a couple of things that were thrown in here as you guys were talking. You did talk a little bit about trees. You did talk about like you'd sneak back into the playground area. You didn't want to leave. You were hiding under things. You played Red Rover, even though, you know, that game, you know, had all kinds of connotations depending on who you were. It was still fun and you ran with your friends. You still talked about outside play as probably one of the most joyous times as a child. And hopefully you find that as an adult too. But as a child, outdoor play is really one of the most natural ways to play that is available to all of our children, or most of our children. I'll say it that way. We do know that some children are challenged by outdoor play, either because of their abilities or perhaps because of where they live and safety factors. I would say they shouldn't never go outside, but there might be limitations. There might be concerns. And we'll chat about that a little bit in a little bit. But I want you to keep in mind that feeling that you have about when you were a kid on a playground, okay? Even when you threw up off the merry-go-round or you went down that slide and your shorts were too short and it was hot and your thighs stuck to the slide when you slid down and you heard that awful noise, right? And it burned, but you went up again anyway. That feeling, I want you to keep thinking of that feeling. I keep thinking my screen is jumping ahead. So let's think now about development. So let's think back. You can think back to when you were a kid or when your children were little or young children, or if you have young children, kind of what they're developing at that time when they're outdoors. Okay, and from birth to 8, this is a pretty wide range of development, but really children outside, no matter how they're playing outside, they do learn more than we would ever think they do. We often send our children during the day in early childhood programs out to the playground, and when they go out to the playground, it's kind of like you open the door and they like spring out and they go running onto the playground. It's like they've been like released, right, from this captivity. And now they're running joyfully across the playground. There's usually some loud noise that goes with it, some screaming, laughter, yelling names, calling out to someone that's already out there. And we just kind of follow along out there and we just kind of let them run around. And while that is very beneficial, there's lots of other things that children could be learning or are learning that we might not even pay attention to. So we know that through outdoor play, children show gains in social studies, science, language arts, and math. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go on. It stimulates brain development, not just because of the oxygen that children are inhaling when they're outside, that fresh air we talk about, but it's because they're using literally every single part of their body while they are outdoors. And it supports every ability. There's really so much that is naturally accommodatable outside. There's options outdoors that children will find or that we can provide. Physical development is the obvious one, right? We know that there's advances in large and small motor development for children that play outside. They get to move those muscles, both large motor and small motor. Think about picking up bugs, right? We see those toddlers squat, oh my goodness, when they pick up those bugs and they've got those little tiny, little chubby fingers and they're picking up those bugs as if, you know, it's the easiest thing to do, right? And we know it's not, but that's great small motor practice. As much as we might cringe, that's great small motor practice. They improve their coordination and their balance being outside. They improve their nutritional appreciation, right? When they're doing gardening, for example, and they're planting seeds, watching those seeds grow from nothing to a plant that then yields fruit or vegetables that they can eat. Improves nutrition, oh, I saw that right. Supports eyesight by being in natural lighting. Natural lighting is really important for eyesight and for mental health. So keep that in mind. And then again, it supports every physical ability outside. There's lots of opportunities for accommodations. Some happen naturally outside, others we can make outside. And then mental health, self-regulation, and behavior. And these are the buzzwords right now, right? For many, many reasons. But it really helps promote imaginative and creative play. Outdoor environments are open-ended. Even if we provide materials, the opportunities are endless. Self-regulation skills are improved and promoted. Children can learn to stop. They can learn to jump. They can learn to interact with their friends. What works and what doesn't. It reduces stress, and you hear a lot about that in self-care as adults, about getting out into nature, breathing the air, touching the trees, sitting in the grass, the sensory experience of sitting in the grass, and how that can really help soothe and calm someone. It supports self-confidence and positive risk-taking behaviors. Check this kid out on the left, right? He is jumping into what looks like a very large and very crunchy pile of leaves. And so that is a risk-taking behavior. We know that he's going to jump into that pile of leaves, and the leaves probably aren't going to fully support him, and he's going to probably get close to the ground by doing that. But it is likely that he will protect himself when he falls into those leaves naturally. We might be going, no, don't jump, but it might be easier for him to take the risk and jump into the leaves to see what happens. Being outdoors promotes spatial awareness and reduces aggression. And I hear teachers mention this all the time. You know, we got to get outside to get our willies out, right? We got to get outside to get all the energy out. And yes, that's true, but sometimes being outside revs up your energy. So it's really based upon what you do once you're out there. It supports socialization and working together as a team, and it helps to increase concentration and focus. So this is just a summary of a lot of research regarding all of the benefits for development for children birth to age 8 for being outdoors. Okay, and it's something that is really kind of logical and something we probably all know and remember either from school or from trainings, but sometimes it's important for us to remember this. because we sometimes will get caught up in all the challenges that go along with going outdoors, and we'll talk about those in a couple minutes. So what I want to do is watch a couple of minutes of this video. And I'm going to play this video, and hopefully you'll be able to hear it and see it. I'm going to play it on a different slide than this. But while you're watching the couple minutes of this video, I want you to think about what looks familiar, what looks new, or maybe something you've not paid attention to before, and how does this new environment you see make you feel? Okay? So let's go to the video. I'm hopeful you'll be able to hear this. If you can't, it will just be a couple of minutes. You'll definitely be able to see everything. So even if you are unable to hear it, you'll be able to see the images. And that's really what we're looking for here, even though what they do say is kind of nice. And you will have access to this video in the handout that'll go along with your certificate. Uh-oh. All right, we're going to stop it there. This is a video by the Natural, I always do that, the Natural Learning Initiative. And this organization actually does go to child care programs and early childhood settings, as well as parks and hospital playgrounds and that sort of thing to basically do an environment analysis, and then helps to redesign a playground space that is more natural and more of a interactive, engaging place for children to play. Another organization that does the same thing or similar things is Nature Explore, and we'll share a little bit about each one towards the end if you are so interested. They also have a ton of training and certifications that you can participate in as well. So a quick chat. What is familiar? What was familiar about that? What were things that maybe were things that you have in your playground or your play space? Yes, Teresa, whatever happens inside can be outside as well. Absolutely. Absolutely. It should be an extension of your indoor learning space. Yep, familiar. Bikes, parachutes, slides, absolutely. Gardens, hopefully you have garden areas. What might have been a new thing that you noticed or a new way of doing something? Garden boxes. Theater outdoors, yeah. How cool is that, right? Bikes, of course, yep. Circle pavement, yeah. The programs that I know I've worked with in the past that have a circle pavement, those children just become absolutely addicted to driving their bikes or running or walking or doing something in that circle space. Children being creative, yes. Being outside, painting outside, doing art outdoors. How did that environment make you feel? Great to hear, Runny Rose. Happy. Mhm. It is very encouraging and very relaxing. I noticed that one of those jealous. I know, I know. Some of these environments are just beautiful. But there's ways to think, and that's one of the things that I want you to think about. It's a paradigm shift. It's a way of thinking shift. Is that while you may not be able to redo your entire playground to be absolutely perfect in every way, or to be a nature explorer playground officially or something of that nature, you may not be able to do that. There's barriers, and we'll talk about those in a second. But what you can do are little things. Think about little ways that you can change your playground setting. So instead of it being like this, okay, and this is it, this is your playground, right? And this is a big one, granted. I think it's a community playground, not a child care center playground. But, this is a pretty traditional playground climber setting, right? Some kind of configuration of this is on many early childhood ed playgrounds these days. Sometimes they're wooden, sometimes they're still metal, sometimes they're this PVC type ecologically friendly plastic. Yes, Helen. Oh, and I know you, and I can even picture you taking out your classroom outdoors and doing it outside. And now's the time to rethink these things. It's the beginning of the summer officially for us here in North America, and it is time that we are spending a lot of time outdoors, or can be spending a lot of time outdoors. And it's time to rethink your playground and think of it being, instead of just being like this, pretty traditional, right? Pretty traditional. Think about it being more like this. Like, how can you make it more interactive, more engaging, and more well-rounded to be sure that you're encompassing all the children? Because I know from working in early childhood that these kiddos that play on this climber, they're not all the kiddos in your program. There's definitely kiddos that don't. There's kiddos that hang along the wall, that might hang next to you, that might sit under the trees, that might be totally into playing in the trees behind this climber. There's others that may sit and read books in the shade. But if you only have this, you're not making the most of the time for the children that don't do this, right? And for the children that do this a lot, are you giving them a lot of other opportunities to expand their horizons? So that's really what I want you to think about while we're working through the second half of this session, is how can you go from the climber-oriented majority type of a playground outdoor setting to an outdoor classroom. And Magda, that's a challenge. Some playgrounds have really gone to the artificial turf, which can get so hot. But it helps with, weeding the grass and all that kind of thing, dirt, mud, that kind of thing. It gets really hard. But there's other things that you can bring into that space and still maintain the artificial grass, but how can you bring stuff in that isn't artificial into that space outside? So really, I want you to think about your space, right? How can you adjust that space to incorporate some of these much more natural type of activities, no matter where you are? And Helen, absolutely, make a quiet reading area underneath the climber. Absolutely. Add home living items to the structure, or a mud kitchen. Yeah, mud kitchens are my favorite. And create an art area. Bringing a sensory table out there, Magda, is a great start. And look at Helen's going to give you all kinds of ideas here. So keep them coming, Helen. This is awesome. So in thinking about how you're going to make adjustments to your play space, some of the things that you need to consider are important. And there's lots of resources out there on this, including the Natural Initiative. There's also, like I said, Nature Explorer and others. But this is really what I came up with based upon different resources that I use, but also my experience. An outdoor play space should have interest areas, just like your indoor setting should. So often, the outdoor space has like 2 interest centers, maybe 3. You might have a sandbox, you might have a climber, and you might have a place for like bikes and balls. And that's usually it on a regular basis. On a regular basis, you should have, and the Natural Initiative that we just watched the video for actually says 10 different areas in your outdoor play space for children to interact and engage by themselves or with others, okay? I suggest you need to have something for large motor, which could be your climber. You have something for art. So if it's a table out there that you can bring materials to, is it easels that are on the fence line so that you can put them across the fence, big pieces of paper against the wall that children can paint on? How can you have an outdoor space where they can do art activities, right? A table might be great because you can also use Play-Doh at the table outdoors. A building space, yes, a building space, and that doesn't count for the sandbox. Sandbox is really more of a sensory place. A building spot, are there some old wooden blocks that you can take outside? Are there some big crates that you can take so they can stack crates? Can you use pool noodles and PVC pipes to create a space for building? And there's, oh, I'm so glad you guys are adding comments into the chat. These are fantastic comments. So take note of these comments, everybody. A sensory space should include a sandbox. I know there are some locations that are very concerned because of animals getting into the sandbox. Keeping it covered and secure is important, or taking in and out sensory tables, in and out of your classroom, out to the outdoor classroom, so that children can play in water, dirt, and so on. Dramatic play, that stage area in that video was just priceless. Can you find 2 trees on your playground? Can you bring out a dress-up box that can come out with the kids and so that they can have dress-up clothes and be able to interact with dress-up clothes in the mud kitchen, which we'll talk about in a couple minutes. Library, bringing out a box of books, a blanket, and some pillows to sit underneath the climber, to sit underneath a tree, to sit out in a shaded area under an umbrella is helpful. And of course, a music area. And several of you have talked about music walls, and that's what's in this picture here. I actually pulled this from a website that came to me, and it is just fantastic, and it's all junk, everybody. If you pay attention to the picture, those are old plastic buckets, there's trays, there's washboards, there's all kinds of plastic cups that they can bang together, basically loose parts that can make sound. The other important thing to have in your playground is a place of shade and different types of lighting. And you're thinking, you're outside, right? Isn't that good enough? Yes and no. Some of us live in very hot places, and shade is a must. As well as being in a well-ventilated area. So you want to make sure that your fence line, if at all possible, doesn't block all the wind, but that allows you a little bit of breeze. But shade and lighting are really important. So things like trees and shrubs, if you can plant them, fantastic. If you have fake grass, that's a little harder. But can you put up a tent, a canopy, like you would have at a picnic, right? Pergolas are permanent structures made of wood that help block sun. Can you do umbrellas? Can you put up an umbrella like you would on your deck? Or on if you have a sandbox like you would on a beach to help block some of the sun and give children some shade so that they want to stay, they want to sit, they want to be comfortable, they want to cool down where that is. Duck blind fabric, absolutely, to put up one of those big shades. It looks like a, there's some that look like sails, and some companies do repurpose old sailing sails from boats to put up on playgrounds or over playgrounds. The beer garden down the road from my house actually has a big tarp that they've put up over some tables so that there's a shaded space for people to gather. The other thought is to put up solar string lights. Solar lights are great, especially if you have places in your playground that are naturally shaded, either by the building or by trees, perhaps. And so it gets a little, not darker, but a little darker where that is. Sometimes putting out things like string lights can add an ambiance and lighting, a twinkle, a wonder that comes when you see lighting of different types. Anything that can provide reflection is also great outside. Mirrors outside are beautiful things. That reflective light is just a sign of wonder to children. And so anytime you can bring in different types of lighting and shade, it's really important. Spaces for gathering, and this has become even more important since the coronavirus. So since we were kind of sent outside and so many classrooms, schools and such were doing classes outside, forest preschools have become all the rage now and are growing in popularity across the world. And it's because they can do activities that would normally be inside, like someone mentioned earlier, outside. And so you have to have spaces to gather. So this is a space actually taken by a picture of from a colleague of mine with a Bright Horizons Center, where they brought out cushions, like for your chairs out on your deck. And that's the space that they have outside with a little basket of books where the children can sit together and read, or the teacher can sit and read a book to the children or do group time outside. There should be spaces for large groups, small groups, and places for pairs and children to sit alone. We should have tables outside. Hopefully they're tables you don't have to bring in and out all the time. They're tables that can stay safely outside and weather the weather. And then blankets and platforms. Blankets are really important to put onto the ground so children maybe aren't sitting in the dirt or sitting in the grass if they're sensitive to that. And platforms. And platforms are things like, I can't remember what they're called now, so it's just left my brain, but those wooden platforms. That's like the word I can come up with now. Pallets. Thank you, Helen. You're good at this, Helen. Pallets are great because they're not that big, but they're big enough for maybe a couple of children to sit on, and you can create a little space that's like a little book space that's just on the pallet. It's the book pallet. Come sit on the book pallet together with friends and read some stories together. Spools are great too. Another great one too that I should have added to this were tree stumps as well that can be arranged in a circle or in a small group so that kids have their own personal space to sit on. And it should be filled with natural materials. Now, this is where you might have to bring in stuff, right? Because if you have fake grass, while it looks really green and you don't have weeds, you do have fake grass. So you're going to need to bring in some things that are natural. So making sure that you have a space or places for gardening. You know, and we'll talk about these in a little more detail in a minute, but sand, you want to have access to dirt, access to water, access to grass, fake or real, wood and stones, right? Rocks, wood meaning like wood cookies or wood stumps, things like that, that you can sit on, climb on, stand on, and move around. The other thing that's really important, and I mentioned grass on purpose here, and I know some places do have the AstroTurf type grass, but it's really important to expose children to grass. I remember working with a toddler program, and it was adorable, and you can actually see an entire video on Facebook, I'm sure, that has children doing this exact same thing. We had toddlers that were about a year old, and we go outside in the spring, and we were so excited to go outside, and we had beautiful new grass, and we go to put the children down into the grass, and they lift up their legs. Because they didn't want to touch the grass, because their natural feeling was, oh, that's pokey, right? Their legs would go up and they wouldn't want to sit, and if they did sit in the grass, they would cry because it was new to them. We have to remember that some of these things, you know, children are only exposed when we expose them and when we give them the opportunity. So sensory walks are a great idea to bring into the classroom with different types of textures to help get them ready for what it's like. Maybe a palette of the fake stuff before they get outside is a good idea, because then they're able to explore that in their comfortable indoor environment. So think about how your current playground think about what areas it has. Does it have interest areas? If not, what interest areas can I bring out on a daily basis, or can we create outside on a regular basis? Does it have shade and lighting options? If not, what can I do to create options for shade and lighting? Are there spaces for gathering? If so, great. If not, where can we create one, right? And how can we create them on a regular basis? And then what natural materials are missing from our outdoor playground? I know it sounds funny to say that, but what natural materials are missing from outdoors that I need to bring outside or I need to incorporate? I want to take a quick poll. How many of you plan for your outdoor learning? How many of you put outdoors on your lesson plan and it's more than just the time of day? Do you plan activities and actually plan enhancements for outside? A couple people. Or is it just kind of your free time? So some people put parachute. Awesome. You're out. Yep. Doesn't hurt for some things to be only for outside time. Absolutely. Yeah, specific things that are only used outside. They're even sometimes stored outside in storage sheds and in containers that are just for the outdoor playground. Yeah, staying outside for hours is fantastic. And sometimes your playground and your play space is enough to keep children occupied effectively and engaged richly for a long period of time. Sometimes the playgrounds are a little lacking and they only cover maybe 1 or 2 interest areas or 2 or 3. And so some children can get very bored. And so then you might run into some aggression or some behavior issues because kids just naturally look for things to do. And sometimes they're not always the most positive. So how many play spaces do you have on your playground? So if we think back to those play spaces, how many do you have on your playground? What is a play space that you might need to add? Arlene, do you mean that you have a lot of them or you need to add a lot? And Reniksa, I am familiar with your playground. It's been quite a few years, but yes, that playground, those playgrounds are quite rich. And so Helen says not many out there, but she tries to enhance by bringing them out. A theater, Donna would love a theater. And it doesn't even have to be a theater like we think of it. It could be a box of materials and costumes and dress-up clothes and props and things like that that you can bring outside with you every day, or you can have in a storage place outside that then can come out during the day. Or maybe it fits with a theme or a subject that you're covering in your indoor space that you want to take outside because there's more place to play out there, right? It's a little bigger, a little more free. Second, the stage and props, yes. And a quiet space, yeah. I mean, what's really interesting is my daughter's in early childhood mental health, and she, her company that she has created a sensory space at the Minnesota State Fair. And so Minnesota State Fair, I mean, if you know your own state fairs, they're quite large, quite loud, quite overwhelming, quite crowded, quite hot. Lots of sounds, lots of food, lots of people, lots of heat, lots of sweat. It's overwhelming. And for those that have sensory challenges, it is really overwhelming. And although it was designed for kids to be able to go to, it's fully air conditioned, it's soundproof, has materials to interact with, it has big, huge, squishy bean bags to sit in and curl up in, as well as other materials that help kind of calm a child who is in sensory overload. And a lot of adults used it because they needed time to just decompress from it being too close outside, too many people, too loud, too overwhelming. So think about that. Your play space might be fun, the kids might be engaged, but keep an eye on those kids that don't engage as readily. And how can you engage them? And maybe a quiet space is a good start. So there's always challenges. So challenges to the outdoors. Some of you have brought these up as you go. And you know, they include space. You know, you don't have a very big outdoor space, or your space is very limited, meaning you have, you know, asphalt, that squishy, foamy stuff underneath the climber, and maybe a small area to ride bikes that's square. You know, that it's just not super natural friendly. It might be funding. You know, it can sound and look expensive to redo a play space, and it doesn't have to be. Weather might be your challenge. You know, maybe you live in a place where it's so hot, like 115 degrees, that going outside is just not something that children do regularly, or they can't do it in long periods of time. Or maybe it's real wet where you are. How do you cope with that? And how do you cope with the expectations of outdoors? You know, especially dealing with parents and what they expect of a child's outdoor play experience. Or so cold in the winter, like in Chicago, yeah, where it gets really, really cold. And so I have some questions for you on that, and some things to share. So with space and funding. Gardening on a space budget. And so often one of the things that is lacking on an early childhood playground is the ability to have a garden. And I think we found ways to make that work in a lot of situations, but sometimes you get on the bandwagon that it needs to be this nice big garden space where there's lots of room for the kids, and you see these amazing pictures online and these videos, and it's like really wonderful, but you just don't have that space, or you don't have any dirt on your playground. You don't have any ground to actually dig in anyway. So how can you make a gardening space work on a space budget? And so pots and containers are the obvious one, right? But they're limiting as to what you can grow. You can create raised beds, and I know programs that have done this with Family Help, where parents come in and they help create raised beds of stuff on a child's playground. And that really makes a difference too, if possible, if you have the space to do it. Wheelbarrows is one that I've seen a lot online recently. They're in small spaces, they can be moved around, and they allow, and typically are at a child's height when they're flat. And then the tires and other found spaces, so other found containers that you can use. I know some people have used kiddie pools, children's pools, those plasticky kind of ones, not plastic, I don't think they're plastic, well, maybe they're, and wagons, yes, those are great, and they add not just a place to plant things, right, that you can plant flowers, you can plant vegetables, but they're also typically a little higher, so they're not down in the ground for kids, right, and for adults that can't bend over or stand up as easily as we all used to. But they're also just add an ambiance to the outdoor environment that isn't all plastic and purchased, that is natural and reused and homey. And that's kind of something that, one thing I've noticed when I've been doing a lot of research on outdoor play spaces, is that the most beautiful ones, the ones where the children seem to really just be integrated into the environment, are very natural looking themselves. They're not the bright plastic playgrounds. They're not the, you know, only plastic toys on the playground. And it's natural items that they've used or found and reused items. Yes, old wood boxes, old boots, gallon buckets, an old desk. Yes, rain gutters, good idea. And yeah, you can typically get used tires for free because they're really hard, if not impossible, to recycle. They do get really hot though, so you'll want to make sure that you protect them so that the children don't burn themselves on the tire, because rubber can get so hot. But these are actually, and I did not include, unfortunately, what they're painted with, but they're painted with something that helps with the temperature so that they don't get so hot. So those are just thoughts. Yes, how can you garden on a space budget? The other thing that you need to do when you're dealing with space and cost, space and funding, is dealing with found materials and loose parts. And this is something that's really become very, very popular in the past few years. There's actually been whole books written on loose parts, which really work both inside a classroom and outside a classroom space. But these are natural materials and or real materials. So if you look at the mud kitchen on the left, these are all materials you have in your kitchen that you may or may not use. I know I have several muffin tins that I haven't touched in years, and they're still in my cabinet, and they probably go to a much better use in a mud kitchen than they would in my my cabinet that I never touch. So there's a sifter, a big bowl, wooden spoons. This is all part of a mud kitchen outside. And it doesn't have to look like a kitchen. You don't have to have kitchenettes or old wooden kitchenettes outside, which some programs do. You can have just a table. You could have some bins. You can ask parents for donated items. We're looking for old bowls, spoons, muffin tins to create a mud kitchen. You will get more than you probably will ever need if you ask for them. And go to local art garden centers. Absolutely. Ask for old materials, old wooden pallets, old wheelbarrows that they may not be using anymore. Really ask around and get creative. I used to say I probably still say it, early childhood educators are some of the best hoarders around because we see potential in absolutely everything. The unfortunate part is that we never have enough space to store it all. And that's always the problem. But we always see potential in everything. And that's what we want to instill in our children, is to see potential in everything. So you can create spaces outside for very little to no money if you are creative about it. Building materials too. These are wooden blocks that were probably those big wooden unit blocks that were then taken outdoors. But you can also notice there's a whole plethora of stones, pine cones, and other rocks that are outside. And I think that incorporating materials that are both indoors and outdoors outside really helps with building materials. You can also use the little stumps that are on the right-hand side. You can use crates, like I mentioned, boxes, just making sure you bring them in a safe place where they don't get wet at the end of the night or wet with dew in the morning, and bring them back out for the next day. You can definitely find materials. Start looking at what is in your house, what is in your garage sales in your neighborhood this time of year, and see what the potential might be for having materials that are outdoor materials. Like this mud kitchen stuff doesn't come back inside. It goes in a box that stays outside or stays in a safe place that is just used for outside, or stays outside, period, and is only used by the children outdoors. You can have similar materials indoors if you'd like to use with the dramatic play space or with your Play-Doh or your sensory table, but this is meant to be outside. Sticks and stones are fantastic tools for math and for building. This is, yes, Helen, and asking neighbors for trees or loose wood cookies that you can have cut for wood cookies at a lumber yard. Sometimes they even will give them to you for free because they have them. But stones are fantastic tools for math activities, and they're natural math activities. If you look at this spiral here, the smaller stones start at the middle and then gradually get to be the larger stones. It's a great math experience because you're talking about graduated size. You're putting them in a spiral, which is a geometric shape, and you're talking about, the different types of stones. You're, like I said, putting them and ranking them in order from smallest to largest to smallest, depending on which direction you went, as well as doing other types of math activities outside, from addition and subtraction to sorting by color, by size, by type of stone. Children will, as we know, collect stones. I know I used to collect stones and seashells when I was a child, as many of you might have also done. But these are natural materials that you can find and collect. Ask your parents to collect them. They're all going on vacations. Maybe now's the right time to ask them to bring back stones from their trip. Or if they're going up to the lake, to bring back stones from their lake trip that then you can wash back at the center and use in your curriculum. Tree stumps are also fantastic, and the ones that you can move are even better. You can see here the big one in the back is actually part of a tree that was cut down, but they couldn't move the tree stump. It was too costly to remove the whole thing, so they cut it down to dependable height, and then they had some that are movable, as well as a whole bunch of rocks and stones, which kind of make it look like a creek bed. So kids can actually walk along the stones, balancing, testing their balance, taking a few risks. Some may jump from stone to stone and jump off at the end, but tree stumps are a great thing, like we mentioned before, to use for small groups, to use for building, and so on. So there's lots of opportunity to not spend a lot of money and to fight the need to purchase those plastic digging tools, or to fight the need to purchase only those materials that you have to buy from a catalog. Really think about where you can find the materials and make it a lot more engaging and a lot more homey. Weather and expectations are another challenge. How many of you have seen these videos? This is just one of a photo of many of videos, and these make my heart sing every time. There's this one that I just could not find. Of course, you see it when you see it, and then you can't find it when you want it. Of these kids that were all out there in matching little jackets and matching little boots and matching little hats, and they were all jumping in puddles. They were having the time of their lives, and they probably did it for a good 10 to 15 minutes. And they absolutely loved it. You can see here that these kiddos are, look at this one over here on the left in the blue. And I'm not sure, but it's possible his boots are completely underwater. I think they all are. The little one in red here with the hat also looks like it's underwater. And how many of you would be having a heart attack about now with these kids? Or how many of your families would be having a heart attack right now? You might be thinking, oh, I love it. But what are the expectations of our children in weather? It's to hide, right? So it's too hot, we're going to stay inside. It's raining, we're not going to go outside. It's snowing, well, we're going to go outside, but only if y'all have the right amount of gear to go outside. And weather can be something we can't control, but we can tackle what we can control and set expectations for families that weather should not be an obstacle for us. During the pandemic, there were many reports and articles and things shared across social media and research done about how classrooms were going outdoors. And some of these classrooms were outdoors regardless of the weather. It didn't matter what it was like outside. They had clothes to do it. And they didn't rely on the key was they didn't rely on the parents to bring the clothes in. Because it's always a good excuse, right? Oh, the kids didn't have all their clothes in. You know, they didn't all have snow pants, so we couldn't go outside. Or, you know, they didn't all bring a warm enough coat, or they didn't all bring mittens, so we didn't go outside. I've heard that many, many times. And we know, right, our parents are dealing with all the things parents deal with. And we need to plan so that we can go outside on a daily basis. And kids should go outside in the rain, absolutely. And rain suits are one way. I was so glad to hear that you have that, Brianna. That's awesome. Rain suits are one way, or coats and boots, snow pants, boots, hats, and mittens that stay at school. Either it's part of the child's you know, kind of when they start in the program, instead of a uniform, which some programs are going to now, everybody purchases one of these and it stays at school. It's got the child's name on it somewhere, so you know that that's that child's. It does not go home with them. It stays at the school so that whenever they go outside, they are ready for all types of weather. And that is an expense, absolutely. But it's an expense that is absolutely worth it when you're able to go outside on a regular basis. We were in the rain yesterday. A friend of mine taught in Ohio outside all winter long during COVID, in only for lunch and nap. It is doable. And the benefits to outdoor play, as we talked about many, many slides ago, are massive. And we can have our children ready for kindergarten if we give them time to play. And outdoors is one of them. So don't let weather be an obstacle for you. Think about how you can make it work. If you're in an environment that is very wet, okay, you want to make sure that every child has a pair of galoshes or boots to go outside in the rain, regardless of the weather, so that they can be outdoors and stomp in those puddles and get deep in the water if need be. And you can tell that they added some of the kids added their own, right? They added their own hats. We've got a blue hat that looks like it's got a chin wrap underneath it back with the little boy or the child in green. And then we have a child here in red with a hat that looks like it's some kind of camouflage blue and green type of pattern on it. Other children are not even that warmly dressed in comparison. So don't let things like weather cause you challenge. Think about how you can get out from under it. And our preschool kids, oh my gosh, slept outside last week, fresh air and natural noise under the huge umbrella. How beautiful is that? I would love to find out more about your program. That is really wonderful. I do know that there are many programs in Europe. You can actually go to YouTube and you can search Forest Preschools in UK, Forest Preschools in Europe, Finland, Sweden. There are some here in the States as well. We have a couple of really neat outdoor preschools and programs here in Minnesota. I know there's a few out in the East Coast as well. And I encourage you to take a look at them and say, instead of saying, I can't do that, say, how can I do that? Right? How can I do that? How can I make my outdoor learning space more than just a climber? Forest preschools are very inspiring, and some of the things that they do we can easily incorporate. We just have to make it a priority to do so. Whoops. So really quick, I want you to take a look at this playground. Helen, you're going to recognize this playground because it was a center that was built not too long ago here in the Twin Cities. But this is an empty playground, and this is just an inspiration for you. If your playground was empty, okay, hadn't been finished yet, didn't have a climber, didn't have anything in it, what would you create on your playground? What would make your play space outside the perfect play space for the kids in your program? What would do it? Think of it that way. Next time you go outside tomorrow, when you're outside on your playground, think about if this place was empty, how would I design it? And then say, how can I bring some of what I just thought about into my current play space without needing to take out climbers and all that kind of stuff? How can I make the play space that I have right now work? Music, yes, why don't we have more music outside? Crazy town, right? Crazy town. Whoops, my mouse keeps going. So a couple of slides of inspiration as we finish here. I know we're a minute or two past that I found that are really helpful, as well as some websites. And like I said, I will be sharing this slide deck with everyone as a handout during or when I send your certificates so that you can look back at this, follow the websites, check out the resources. The Natural Learning Initiative is out from the North Carolina State. They have an amazing website with lots of examples, as well as trainings and certifications that you can get in outdoor play. And this is just an example of one of the pages where you can actually click on these pages and it will give you floor plans, I guess you could call them, layouts of what the playgrounds look like before and after, samples of different types of things that they have on their playgrounds now. Really neat inspiration if you're looking to just kind of just browse the websites and get inspired for ideas. Nature Explore is another wonderful organization. We've had them here to present a couple of webinars before. Outdoor classrooms for Nature Explore, you can become a Nature Explore certified classroom. And this page here on the Nature Explore website that I'm linking here is actually their portfolio of all these Nature Explore classrooms that are certified. So it gives you great ideas because these are regular old programs. These aren't expensive, created from scratch type scenarios. These are family child cares, they're preschools, they're child care centers, all different types from all over the country. And, you know, some of them are just simple and beautiful. I've also linked some other resources here that I just find really inspiring. I'm a social media nut in some ways, and I do follow a lot of these sites on Facebook or Instagram or both, just because I love their inspiration. The curiosity approach is one of the most awe-inspiring, wonder-inspiring companies that really teaches you to take a different type of a look at your program. Natural materials, natural type environments, nothing that's really getting away from anything that's fake, not real materials. It's just a neat and inspiring way to look at your learning spaces. The Empowered Educator has some amazing tools and ideas for creating a mud kitchen, designing your outdoor space, going outside with sensory trays and sensory boards or sensory bins. And then Teaching Strategies had a recent article out about making mud pies, how to use mud flakes. I think it was National Mud Day or something like that. And that was a really fun article as well. And Tom Bedard, yes, he does give good inspiration too. So if you're looking for people to seek out their writings and their examples, those would be just some of many. Some of the references that I used for this presentation as well, Green Schoolyards of America was created in the wake of the pandemic and really talks about how you can make your school, your early childhood program, an outdoor learning environment. Nature Explorer and Natural Learning. And then the North American Association for Environmental Education is another one, as well as NACE has some great resources as well. So I hope this was somewhat of an inspiration to you to take a different look at your outdoor environment. It's more than just a climber, which most of our classrooms, most of our early childhood programs have. And to end it is, I remember I worked at a center here in the Twin Cities. We were building it from scratch. And I remember that the whole time I was there, we never had a playground with a climber. The playground had hills, it had lots of great spaces for bicycles and tricycles to ride around. It had a big old tree stump, it had a space with trees and rocks and little, what do you call them, footprint type stones, so it was like a path, and that was a great dramatic play area. We had this amazing sandbox with a water pump and the whole kit and caboodle, grassy areas. It was great, but there was no climber. And I will tell you that despite the years that I was there and us consistently helping to convince parents that their children did not need a climber, not long after I left, they added a climber. And it wasn't even something that, yeah, so they added a climber because they thought that they needed to have one because the parent expectation was such. And so I think it's important for us to find middle ground, right? Not try to go whole hog with some of our families and our programs to this natural play space if that's not what they're used to. Helping them to understand the importance of combinations of all of the above are really important. And I just absolutely love this space in this final slide. How beautiful in color and in natural materials is that space to play in and explore. So think about how you can make your space work. Don't think about, I can't do this. Think about, how can I do this? And how you can make your outdoor learning space more than just a climber. So that is all. Thank you all for joining me tonight. Yes, and this is the time, Lorraine, to get them. Now is the time. So that's why I think this is so timely, right? This is when you can go back tomorrow and think about, what would it look like with, if this was totally flat, there's nothing here, how would I arrange this space? What would I add to it? Where would I put everything? And then think about, how can I make that happen? Brain is on overload. Yes, Carol, that happens. That happens. I didn't even go into the infant environments because that's a whole nother webinar. An infant outdoor play space. How many of you have one? Not for toddlers, but for infants. But for infants. Trust me, they don't need to be super big. They just need to be outdoors. I wish. I know, Arlene. And a screened porch. Nice. That's beautiful. Fresh air without the heat or the sun. Great. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening. And